In these few days, Faye spent a lot of time in both the real world and Diablo world, accompanying Angela and Elena. After this dangerous experience, Faye thought through a lot of stuff. He was no longer solely focused on chasing after the elevation in strength. Instead, he also paid more attention to the people around him. Of course, the king didn't just slack off. As he was spending time with Elena and killing monsters in Diablo world casually, his level increased as well. The two of them got even closer, and they got their seamless coordination back. Right now, they already finished the third quest, the Tainted Sun, in the second map, Lutgolian. The Barbarian was now Nightmare Mode level 46, and Elena was now Nightmare Mode level 27. Both of them experienced an increase in strength. Except for leveling up in Diablo world, Faye put a lot of effort into reading Demon King's Sword. This book was just like an encyclopedia of cultivation and techniques from the ancient times. It contained the powerful techniques that were either lost and partial on the continent. Some of them are moon class and sun class techniques, and there were a few legendary and mythical techniques. To Faye's surprise, there were some techniques suitable for him. It was beyond his understanding of the cultivation and technique structure on Azeroth continent. His strength originated from Diablo world. His most powerful character, the Barbarian, had little magic energy and 99% of his power was physical strength. After Faye learned granular control from Marshal St. Krasik, he was able to use the physical strength in a magical way. He was able to exert his physical strength to the area around him and create tangible stuff. It was not too different from warrior energy. However, it was still different from warrior energy, and he couldn't use the combat techniques in this world. Faye tried to cultivate warrior energy before, but it seemed like his body was a little defective and couldn't store warrior energy and form star swirls. If it were for Diablo world, Faye would be a useless person in this world that was ruled by the law of the jungle. Therefore, Faye was surprised to find techniques that were based on insane physical strength and could be used by him. After reading a bit more, he was surprised again. In the book, he discovered a unique technique of using physical strength. It allowed Faye to mimic warrior energy and use high-level combat techniques that otherwise could only be powered by warrior energy. It reminded Faye of the traditional Wuxia novel named Demigods and Semi-Devils by Jin Yong. In the book, a master was able to use a technique to mimic the internal force of Shaolin Temple and use the unique techniques of Shaolin Temple. To Faye, if he were able to master this technique, he would be able to use 90% of the combat techniques recorded on Demon King's Sword and on Azeroth continent. To Faye, who had the Golden Finger Diablo world, he had a lot of time to study and learn the technique. Thinking about how he could learn his enemies' techniques in battle and defeat them with it, giving them a taste of their own medicine, the king was extremely motivated. Such a showy scene, the king thought. It was one of the driving forces behind the effort he put into studying Demon King's Sword. 3 days later, Faye received another letter from the letter office in the afternoon. In the letter, it mentioned that Arshavin, Zenith's god of war, didn't stop after conquering the Spartax Empire. Instead, he led 50,000 elite cavaliers and his own Iron Blood Legion toward the Eindhoven battle zone. In just 2 days, Arshavin led the troops and traveled for more than 500 kilometers, killed 70,000 enemies, conquered 7 cities, defeated the 4 main battle legions of Eindhoven, and killed more than 20 royal masters and legion commanders of Eindhoven. Then, he combined forces with the troops of Zenith already in the region and surrounded the capital of Eindhoven. It wouldn't take long for the city to be conquered. Once the capital of Eindhoven was conquered, the Eindhoven Empire would be wiped out. Faye was shocked again. In just less than 10 days, Arshavin was able to push 2 level 1 empires this far. The longtime enemy of Zenith, Spartax, was wiped out with only a small and weak rebel force still around, and the Eindhoven Empire got its capital surrounded. Could it be that the masters in both empires couldn't deal with Arshavin and his Iron Blood Legion? Could it be that there are powerful masters under Arshavin's command? Faye suddenly thought back to the 2 guards Emperor Yasin had and the 2 ghost guards Emperor Cromkamp had. He suddenly realized that all the empires had their own hidden moon-class forces. Therefore, there must be powerful masters around Arshavin to defeat them. Otherwise, the ordinary soldiers wouldn't be able to push forward so fast and smooth. Also, in the letter, it mentioned that the Jax battle zone, which was insignificant before, was getting a lot more attention since the other two wars were almost done. A lot of nobles and officials in the military headquarters were displeased with the fact that Faye still hadn't defeated the invaders of Jax yet. They were planning to make Arshavin the head commander of the Jax battle zone. If Faye couldn't get a big win in a short time, he might be replaced. Everything was going in the direction that strategist Old Aryang predicted. Humph! Fuck this position of head commander. I don't like it anyways. It would be great if I can get out of here. Faye thought as he flicked his wrists and turned the letter into a cloud of powder. He was already dreaming about his life in Chambord where he walked his pets, lived with beauties, leveled up his strength, and made a lot of money secretly. The fourth day Faye sneaked into the underground ocean. After he passed through the mythical gate, he traveled through the first 34 levels again. Several days had passed, and there were a lot of new faces. However, most of them were people with strength from 6-star to New Moon. No one was super powerful. These people were here, risking their lives to find treasures. Since most of them were weak, the casualties were high. Some people were killed because they triggered magic traps, some of them experienced the backlash from the martial statues, and got their life energy sucked away, and some of them were killed by assassins who were there to kill people and get their treasures. These people who were all elites in the outside world were killed in the mythical palace like animals. In this cruel world, lives were cheap and not valuable. However, even though this was the case, a lot of masters came here from afar just to bet on their luck. In the last while, a 9-star warrior found a level 7 combat weapon. An 8-star warrior found a moon-class technique. A level 1 low-tier new moon elite found the blueprint of a magic array that could kill a full moon elite. And many people were able to break through their long-time thresholds and advance into new realms. This was the mythical palace. It was a combination of heaven and hell, and death and extreme fortunate coexisted. Only the strong-minded cultivators could harvest the fruits of their actions. Faye didn't find anything when he wandered around, and he soon arrived at the elemental altar. Since it was used, the energy surge on it was gone. The people outside of it could no longer use it to bypass the dangerous level 35 region and enter the core region. However, there were a lot of masters around here, and most of them were vicious and ill-intended. They were all waiting for the people to come out of the level 36 region so that they could rob them. It was heard that, in the past, a few lucky cultivators who got to enter the level 36 region were attacked by many people and were assassinated by others. If the people who entered the core region weren't powerful, even if they could get precious herbs and powerful combat weapons, they might lose their lives, let alone losing their treasures. The danger was everywhere. Faye already saw more than a dozen broke corpses around the elemental altar. They were powerful masters when they were alive, but now even the items of little value were taken away. Also, he sensed a few murderous spirits hidden around the area. After calculating the time, he realized that the mythical gate would only close in a few more days, and people like Hazelbank would only be kicked out of that small world by then. Therefore, Faye turned around and decided to return to Dual Flag City for now. At this moment, several sharp, murderous spirits revealed themselves. Faye was surprised to find that he was targeted. Huh? Interesting. I'm the prey now. Faye sneered. He didn't expect that people would want to rob him. It was clear that these people wanted to kill him first before robbing all the treasures from his storage ring. They probably didn't know what was in his ring, but they would rather kill him and find out than let him go. It was their habit. The king didn't have any warrior energy surge or magic energy surge on him, so these people probably thought that he was a weak person. Faye sneered but didn't do anything strange. He walked toward the outskirts of the area slowly. As he expected, those murderous spirits moved slowly and followed him tightly. Whoosh! 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 Before he could walk out of the level 34 region, 4 people dashed out of an alleyway and blocked Faye's way. These 4 people were dressed in a similar fashion. They were all wearing black inner shirts with white light armors on top. Even though they were of different heights, they all had dense murderous spirits. It was clear that they just killed someone earlier. Also, they weren't wearing any masks. It seemed like they were confident in their abilities and thought that they didn't need to hide their identities. Kill him, one of them shouted. The treasure-seeking beast reacted. He has great treasures on him. This man was thin and his hair was white. Greed flashed in his tiny eyes, and he had a small golden cage in his hand. In the cage, there was a raccoon-like creature. This little guy had big eyes, and it looked anxious and worried. It squeaked loudly, looking like it was fearful of the person who was holding the cage. According to what this man said, this raccoon-like creature was a unique beast that was sensitive to treasures. It was quite interesting. After hearing this man's order, the other three people revealed their weapons. They dashed toward Faye like lightning bolts and sneered. These three people were all mid-tier New Moon elites, and they were influential figures in the outside world. In addition, it seemed like they were able to coordinate quite well. They moved in a pattern and blocked off all of Faye's possible escape routes. Ha ha ha! Since you have treasures on you, then die. Wind strike. The person who attacked Faye first was holding a huge sword that was more than 2.5 meters long and half a meter wide with both hands. It looked heavy like an iron plate. However, in this man's hands, this sword was swung around easily. As he chopped down, the body of the blade left a series of afterimages in the air, and his body started to spin because of the momentum of the sword. He dashed at Faye like a blade storm. This was a powerful high-level moon-class technique. The sword was like a whirlwind, turning around and becoming more powerful after each rotation. This man used his moon-class combat technique right off the bat, meaning that he wanted to end this battle as soon as he could. At the same time, a casual expression appeared on his face, showing others that he was at ease. In fact, his other three peers didn't follow up with more attacks. It was clear that they didn't think Faye, who had no energy surge on him, could pose threats to them. Faye moved aside and staggered. It looked like he dodged the first attack by luck. At the same time, he asked them, "Are the people around the elemental altar killed by you guys?" "Ha ha ha. Kid, you are going to die soon. Why are you worried about those dead people? You are right. I killed 3 of them. You will be the 4th. Since the wind strike was initiated, it wouldn't stop in a short time. As this man sneered, his huge sword swung faster and faster in the air, drawing a series of red lines in the space around him. The energy coming off the blade was powerful, and the momentum was great as well. It looked like Faye was going to be chopped by this sword very soon. Humph! Since that is the case, then die. After experiencing the incident caused by the Blood Edge mercenary group, Faye hated bandits who killed people and robbed their properties. Therefore, he wasn't going to hold back after learning about what happened. He unleashed his insane physical strength. He stomped on the ground, and 2 huge spider web-like cracks appeared. Then, his body turned into a series of phantoms that were hard to catch with the human eyes. Whoosh! 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 Boom! When the sword shredded the last phantom, the wind strike finally slowed down before stopping. The crazy wind created by it slowly disappeared, and the huge sword stabbed into the ground and shook violently. Not sure when, but Faye was already inside the inner circle created by this strike, and one of his hands was on this attacker's neck as if he was holding up a chicken. Although this man was muscular, he couldn't do anything. He felt like the hand around his neck was a metal clench, locking him down with indefensible power. In his eyes, Faye would see fear and regret. Crack! Before the other 3 people could react, Faye turned his wrist, and this person who attacked him first got his neck broken. Ah! He actually killed our 4th brother? Go! Let's go and kill him. We need to avenge for our 4th brother. After a moment of pause, the elder who led the group roared as the murderous spirit on him intensified. Then, the 3 of them all dashed forward at Faye aggressively. Such a rare opportunity. Let's see if the technique documented in Demon King's sword is that magical. Faye thought to himself as he grasped his hand, pulling over the huge sword that was now stabbed on the ground. After he got the sword in his hand, he lightly knocked it and heard a series of deep muffled noises. He got a little used to the weight of the sword, and he nodded at the 2 people who were about to land their weapons on his forehead. He raised his arm and shook his wrist, moving the blade upward. Tink! Tink! After 2 loud metal colliding noises, the 2 people who charged at Faye in the front felt like huge waves hit them. As their faces changed color, Their bodies flew backward. Wind strike. Fei swung the sword, and his body moved in a circle gracefully under the momentum of the sword. The blade also drew red lines in the air, and huge winds blew in all directions. The strike that Fei used was no different to the wind strike that was used previously. In fact, when Fei used this technique, it was more controlled and looked a lot more beautiful. The movements of the sword seemed as if they followed the natural laws, and it was dazzling. Puff, puff. Two light noises sounded. The two charging at Fei didn't react in time, and the sword instantly hit them. Their bodies got cut in half from the waistline. However, since the sword was so fast, they didn't realize what happened for a few seconds. When the sword finally landed on the ground, blood spurted out of their wounds. By then, they finally looked down and saw the injuries. They didn't die right away. They whined and regretted their decisions. You also know the wind strike? Who are you? Did you lure us here intentionally? You are so vicious. The thin elder who had the golden cage with him was terrified. He knew that he was no match for Fei, and he wanted to turn around and run away. Fei waved his hand. Whoosh! The huge sword dashed out of his hand and turned into a phantom. Before that elder could get away, the sword pierced through his body, nailing his corpse onto the wall of a palace. 3 of them were all mid-tier New Moon elites, and this elder was the most powerful, reaching the level of top-tier New Moon. However, they were all too weak for Fei. To Fei, this kind of battle wasn't even challenging. The only thing he got from it was the proof that the unique technique recorded in Demon King's sword was useful. Fei only saw that person use the wind strike once, and he was able to mimic it. In fact, the technique was more powerful in his hands. It is probably dependent on my opponent's level. That person was only at mid-tier New Moon, a lot weaker than me. That is probably why I was able to see through his technique thoroughly. It is probably harder to mimic a more powerful person's technique. This technique is a little useless, but it good for showing off. Haha, Fei commented after the battle. As he was about to leave, a series of squeaking noises sounded. He turned around in surprise and saw that the raccoon-like creature already got out of the golden cage. When Fei killed that elder, this golden cage fell onto the ground and broke. That was how this creature got out. At the moment, with fear and anxiousness in its eyes, it was bowing at Fei, thanking him for saving it. This little guy is able to get within 3 meters of me, and I didn't notice it? Fei was surprised. Even a half-moon elite couldn't get this close to him without being discovered. From the look on this little guy's face, it seemed like it wanted to stay with him, even though it was a bit scared of him. Fei laughed and reached out his hand. The little creature squeaked happily and climbed up Fei's arm. After it sat on Fei's shoulder, it squeaked again, showing its gratitude. This little creature was quite smart and knew how to behave. Also, it had a unique fragrance, making Fei feel refreshed. To show its appreciation, it even licked Fei's ear intimately. Fei instantly liked this little creature. Perhaps he saw a lot of cartoons with raccoons in them when he was little, but this creature did make him remember his childhood. This little creature on his shoulder was like a chubby furry dark red ball with a tail that had black and white strips on it. It looked just like a cartoon character. That old guy said you are a treasure-seeking beast. Since you aren't affected by the natural pressure in this space, it means that you are unique indeed. It will be tragic if you die in here. Let me take you out. Sit still. Whoosh! As soon as Fei said that, he exerted force through his feet, and he dashed toward the exit. The little creature on Fei's shoulder squeaked cheerfully as it held onto Fei's hair tightly. It seemed like it was used to this high speed. Ah! Such a cute animal. When they returned onto the land, the raccoon still didn't want to leave Fei. Therefore, Fei brought it back to his temporary home. All the girls, including Angela, fell in love with this raccoon, and they all wanted to rub it. This little guy was very unwilling, and it squeaked and struggled. However, it still couldn't get away from the girls. Although it was able to survive under the massive amount of natural pressure in the level 34 region in the mythical palace, it didn't seem to have any unique power. Like a furry ball, it wasn't able to get away from the girls who were loving it. In the end, it had to accept its fate. With a wronged expression on its face, It lied in Spring's palm with its front paws cupping its chin. As it stared at Faye with its big round eyes, it had to endure the rubs of the girls. Faye was a little surprised. He thought that this little raccoon would be intimate toward Angela, but that didn't seem to be the case. This was the first time that a creature was more intimate toward him instead of Angela, who seemed to have a unique ability to communicate with animals. Faye laughed at this raccoon's misfortunate. There was Blackie at first, and then Thug, Chick, and Hooligan joined. Now, there was this raccoon-like treasure-seeking beast. If this trend continued, his home was going to be turned into a zoo. However, since Angela now was happy every day with the animals around her, Faye didn't mind getting more pets. After playing for a while, Faye thought about the time and decided to leave. Suddenly, that raccoon squeaked and jumped out of Spring's hands. Like a brown flash of lightning, it jumped onto Faye's shoulder agilely. It grabbed onto Faye's hair and wasn't willing to let go. With tears in its eyes, it looked at the girls as if they were terrifying demon beasts. It looked like it was scared by the girls' rubbings. Ha ha ha! Since you like to stay with me, then you can follow me anywhere. This satisfied Faye's vanity. After getting so many pets, this creature was the only one that liked to stay with him and not Angela. Hey, you ungrateful little guy. Emma stared at the raccoon viciously. Squeak, squeak. As if this creature knew that it was able to follow Faye around, it was no longer scared. With one of its paws on Faye's hair, it turned around and stuck out its tongue at Emma. It looked just like a playful child. After saying goodbye to the girls, he headed toward the watchtower on the west gate. Then, Faye opened the portal and went into the mysterious stone room with Little Raccoon. This was the name Faye gave it. Huh? All of the runes on this stone throne are copied down. Faye walked in and saw that the two mad scientists were no longer around the throne. Kane was walking around the throne with a magnifying glass as if he was trying to find something, and Akira was busy working on something at the multipurpose laboratory station. We finally finished after 3 days. I almost died. Copying down the godly runes sure is a huge project, Kane said exhaustedly. When he turned around, his eyes lit up. He asked, "Where did you get this little guy?" He was pointing at Little Raccoon. "The mythical palace?" Faye told him about what happened. He then asked, "Why? Does this little guy have a great background?" Anything that was able to get Kane's attention should be special. My ass. It is just a little unique demon beast that is very timid. It would run away at any sign of danger. Although it is rare, it doesn't have any combat power. Its only strength is at escaping. It is also sensitive to gold, treasures, and energy surges. In simple terms, it is only a weak and unless creature. Kane was obviously trying to tease Faye, and Faye didn't know how to reply. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Little Raccoon was really smart. After hearing Kane's comments about it, it squeaked angrily to protest. Also, it showed it two shiny fangs trying to scare the old man. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," Kane added after seeing Little Raccoon's expression. "This type of demon beasts is smart. They could understand the human language even though they couldn't speak it. Also, it is useless. It has no sense of loyalty. It would escape first in the face of danger." Squeak! Little Raccoon held onto Faye's hair and waved its other front paw, trying to tell Faye that it was wronged. It was trying to tell Faye that Kane was lying and didn't want Faye to ditch it. Ha ha ha! I know. Don't worry. I won't abandon you. Faye rubbed Little Raccoon's head. He felt like there was a unique bond between him and this little creature, and he really liked it. Only then did Little Raccoon calm down, turned around and made faces at Kane. "Let's talk about the important matter. We discovered something interesting. Come and take a look." Kane ignored Little Raccoon and waved at Faye, asking him to come over. Faye looked at the top of the throne and murmured, These patterns, are they words?" After observing where Kane was pointing, he felt like the patterns and texture on the top of the throne resembled the characteristics of words. That is right. After I went through several ancient books, I found that these are ancient texts. Kane became excited as he explained, "You can't imagine what they mean. Haha. They mean the Throne of Chaos. The throne of chaos? Faye asked quickly. What does it mean? Mean. Cain nodded and replied confidently. I don't know. Faye was at a loss for words. Little Raccoon still remembered about the comments Cain made about it, so it took this opportunity to give Cain a few disdainful stares. All of the books I read and the legends I heard never mentioned anything like this. However, from the look of it, you got a great treasure. Look here. See that? It is a dent. Look closer at the size of it. Don't you think it is familiar? That is right. It is perfect for inlaying magic gems. Cain pointed at a dent on the throne and said proudly, You are right. Why don't you place a magic gem in there to test it out? Faye asked as he rubbed that dent with his finger. Ha ha ha, I already tied. Look there. Cain said as he pointed at a pile of white dust that was beside the throne. It was at least 30 centimeters tall. Faye was confused. Cain smiled so brightly that he showed his teeth, even though he was missing one front tooth. He took out a chipped ruby and placed it into the dent carefully. Bam! The magic gem instantly made a sound. Faye was able to tell that the energy inside the gem was instantly sucked away by the throne. Then, the magic gem turned from a ruby into an ordinary gray stone. Under a mysterious force, it was then crushed into a pile of sand-like dust. After devouring the energy inside the magic gem, no change took place on the throne of chaos. It felt like a few sand grains were thrown into the ocean, not affecting anything. No change. Faye looked at Cain with a confused expression. There must be a change, but it too minuscule. Like a void that couldn't be filled. This throne's demand for energy is on another level. I'm sure that this isn't its final form. If there is enough energy, it might undergo a shocking transformation. Do you think these few words were here before? No. They only showed up after I used a ton of magic gems, Cain said proudly. Faye's face froze. He murmured, You mean? Cain nodded and said, Bingo! You were right. Haha, the magic gems you gave me before are all used up. That ruby was the last one. Faye, you need to think of a way to get another load of magic gems. Otherwise, this laboratory couldn't continue forward. You? Faye felt the impulse of beating this careless old man. After a few deep breaths, he controlled himself and said as he gritted his teeth, Oh, damn! You were going to turn me, a millionaire, into a beggar who couldn't even afford toilet paper. You know, once I encounter something interesting, I couldn't hold myself back. Although Cain said that, he didn't look ashamed. However, I promise you that once the throne of chaos get its energy, it will demonstrate abilities that you couldn't even imagine. Huh? Energy. Faye suddenly thought of something. He reached into his storage ring and took out the world stone. That was only 1/4 of its original size. The blue light it emitted lit up the whole room, and a holy and gentle energy surge filled the space. No! The energy inside the world stone is too vast. The throne of chaos couldn't handle it? Before Cain could finish, Faye already stuffed the world stone into the dent in the throne of chaos. Instantly, all the gentle blue light that filled the stone room got sucked into the dent on the throne. Thin lines around the dent lit up with a blue color, and they looked like the blood vessels of a human body. They expanded and contracted rhythmically as they sucked the energy from the world stone. Both Faye and Cain were mesmerized by this scene. Even Little Raccoon and Akira, who was working on something mystic at the station, were attracted by the changes occurring on the throne. A huge amount of energy was rushing into the throne from the world stone, and Faye felt like he heard loud noises made by gigantic waves in the ocean. Gradually, the thin lines on the throne grew larger. If they were capillaries before, they were now veins and arteries. There were 2 main blue vessels that were as thick as thumbs, and they branched out into many smaller vessels. In the end, dense blue lines almost completely wrapped around the throne of chaos. This scene was really strange. It felt like a dried-up corpse was revived. Every time the vessels expanded and contracted, it felt like a heart that had been frozen for tens of thousands of years pumped. In the meantime, the world stone that was placed inside the dent was getting smaller at a visible speed. This process continued for about 10 minutes. In the end, as if the throne was full, it stopped sucking in energy. The world stone now reduced to the size of a small coin. Then, the world stone slowly floated back into Faye's hand. At this moment, the throne of chaos underwent some spectacular changes. As the blue vessels slowly disappeared one by one, the surface of the throne started to ripple. The unknown silver-colored material began to decompose, and many runes that were unseen before appeared and flowed around the throne. As if a pair of invisible hands were recreating the throne, the gray and coarse throne became glamorous. The rough surface became smooth and shiny with detailed patterns on it. As if an ugly duckling turned into a swan, the throne of chaos became completely different. Two dragon-like beast statues were on the two sides of the throne. Their muscular bodies were beside the armrests, and their heads lied on top of the armrest with their mouths wide open, revealing the sharp teeth. It felt like they were alive. Also, there were many heads of beasts sculptured on the stairs below the throne, and their eyes were like the eyes of the demons. Beside the armrests and the beasts, there were two goddess statues where their facial features were unclear. They were both kneeling with a plate in their hands, and the statues were less than 1 meter tall. Behind these two statues, there were two life-size warrior statues. They were fully armored, and they looked like two war gods who were serving the master of the throne loyally. These 4 statues were all lifelike, and their eyes were all closed. It made Faye feel like they were going to come to life if their eyes opened. The only thing that was a little surprising was that Faye felt like the 2 plates the 2 goddesses were holding and the 2 flat hands the 2 warriors were extending out were supposed to have things on them. Right now, they gave off the feeling of emptiness. The overall color of the throne was still silver, but it was a lot more refined and smooth, feeling prestigious and majestic. Is this the final form of the throne of chaos? Faye suppressed the shock he was experiencing and walked to the throne. As if the throne sensed Faye's approach, it slowly landed on the ground. When it landed on the ground, it didn't send a single speck of dust into the air, as light as a feather. Tap, tap, tap. Faye stepped onto the stairs of the throne, turned around, and sat on it. This feeling, I feel like I'm becoming one with the throne. Faye sat onto the throne and placed his arms on the armrests. He felt a warm and smooth sensation, and it was really comfortable. He felt like he and this throne was connected by blood, and he was sitting at the peak of the world, looking down at everything in this world like a supreme god. Little Raccoon was sitting on Faye's shoulder, and it was looking around with its eyes squinted. It was feeling very comfortable as well. It was clear that this little guy enjoyed the feeling of sitting on this throne. Ha ha ha. This is the real throne. Ha ha ha. Interesting. Kane stroked his long white goatee and commented. To him, what happened was no different to solving a complicated magic problem. He was very excited, and he wanted to touch the new throne with his own hands. He said, Faye, I told you that you got a great treasure. This item is no different to a god-tier item. Ha ha. Ouch. Before Kane could even touch the throne, an invisible force appeared and pushed him away. He wasn't prepared, and he fell onto the ground. Faye was surprised. He quickly jumped down the throne to help Kane to get up. He said, What happened? I didn't do anything. Could it be that this throne rejects others? Don't worry. Ha ha ha. Interesting. Kane was still in his knowledge-seeking mode. He ignored the dust and swelling on his body as he stared at Faye and shouted, Why did you get off? Quick, go back and see what this throne is capable of. Didn't you say that you think it could travel through space and time? Go give it a try. Faye was speechless. Although Kane was a little greedy sometimes, his professional and devoted attitude was something that Faye couldn't complain about. No wonder this greedy and timid old man could become the living history book and the encyclopedia in Diablo world. His enthusiastic attitude and work ethic allowed him to know all the mysteries and secrets in the past and present in Diablo world. In terms of knowledge, even Akira couldn't be compared to him. After he returned to the throne of chaos, Faye placed his hands on the 2 godly beasts' heads on top of the armrests. He suddenly thought about the level 36 region in the mythical palace, and he wondered if this throne could travel through space and bring him back to that small world. As soon as he thought of that, the throne lightly vibrated. Ha! Disappeared. Cain was so shocked that his mouth opened wide. After a series of tiny transparent ripples appeared in the air, Faye, Little Raccoon, and the Throne of Chaos all disappeared. There was no energy surge or anything strange. It felt like they dissolved into the air. God! That throne! What kind of god-tier item is that? It is able to penetrate through this room that is constructed using semi-godly runes? Is there any place in the world that it couldn't get to? Cain was stunned after he saw the floating light runes on the wall of the laboratory. The building blocks of this room were actually created by condensing semi-godly runes. They were able to block the insane chaotic energies in the void, but the Throne of Chaos was able to get through it easily. That was truly shocking. It seemed like nothing in the world could block Faye. Not necessarily. Look there. Akira, who was busy with her research, pointed at the blue portal in the room. She said, "This portal didn't need to penetrate the semi-godly runes to be here. Although the Throne of Chaos is extraordinary, Faye couldn't use its full power yet. Therefore, it shouldn't be able to penetrate the walls created by semi-godly runes." The mythical palace, the level 36 region, a dash of red light and a dash of golden light shot across the sky, but ordinary warriors wouldn't be able to detect them. The golden light was chasing after the red light nonstop. "Yasin, how dare you pressure me like this? I swear, if I get out, I will lead the Royal Mage Legion of the Leon Empire and conquer your little zenith. No one can live." An angry roar resonated in the sky. The red light that was running away was the Sun-class Lord Domenech, who lost to Emperor Yasin several days ago. "Ha ha ha! Do you think you can get away today? Impossible!" A loud and majestic voice sounded next. It was Emperor Yasin who came up with the famous phrase, "Yasin is inferior to no one." Although he was only a peak full moon elite, he was chasing after Sun-class Lord Domenech. Whoosh! 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 Several dashes of golden energy traveled faster and hammered onto the red energy sphere, dashing away in the front. Every time a dash of golden energy collided with the red energy sphere in the front, that energy sphere would dim a little. Soon it was about to break. "Yasin, don't try to push me over the edge," Domenech shouted back angrily as he pulled the fire elements in nature to replenish his own. He was a Sun-class lord, and his magic energy was on a higher level than the energy of the Moon-class elites. However, as those dashes of golden energy hit his energy sphere that was made of his own superior magic energy, his magic energy got depleted fast. It felt like Yasin's energy naturally countered his. "You talk too much," Yasin replied coldly and didn't go easy. Several powerful dashes of golden energy hammered onto the red energy sphere, not giving Domenech a moment to breathe. "You have chased me for 10 days and 10 nights. You are crossing the line. I'm not going to run anymore. Hee hee. I will risk it all and let you experience the real anger of a Sun-class lord." As if he reached the tipping point, Domenech turned around and stayed still in the air. He knew that he wasn't going to escape from the look of things, and he was going to fight back. As he started to chant loudly, it felt like all the fire elements in this world was being pulled to him. "Huh? Are you going to put up the last fight? I look forward to your performance." Emperor Yasin also paused himself, and he stood 100 meters away from Domenech. As the bright golden warrior energy flame burned around him vigorously, he sneered and didn't make a move. He looked composed and confident like a real emperor. Something darker than the sunset and tastier than the blood. Power of the dark abyss. "Awake! Let me—" As Domenech chanted and summoned the fire elements, it felt like another sun was being created in the sky. The air became hot and dry, and the green grasses and trees more than 1,000 meters down on the ground were set on fire. As the heat increased, even the ground started to crack. In an area of 1 square kilometer, it felt like a new world of fire emerged. Finally, the chanting stopped. "Ha ha ha ha! Yasin, you are overconfident. You are conceited. I told you that the Moon-class elites couldn't imagine the power of Sun-class lords. Ha ha ha. I might not be able to defeat you in battle, but you will pay dearly if I risk my life to fight you. Ha ha ha. Die. Burn. My core. Kiss of the fire god. As soon as he said that, something terrifying happened. A giant that was more than 1,000 meters tall and was created by flames appeared out of nowhere. It was wearing a crown of thorns and holding a huge wand. Both items were made from the fire as well. As two dashes of flames shot out of its eyes, it tilted its body forward and opened its mouth, trying to suck Yasin into its mouth and devour him. Huh? Burning of the core. Emperor Yasin turned serious as well. He instantly dashed back, and the golden warrior energy burned violently around him. As he waved his hands, huge blades and swords were created by his golden energy. Soon, there were so many of them that they covered the entire sky. Emperor Yasin pushed his palms forward, and all the golden weapons dashed at the fire giant like a meteor shower. Ha ha ha! Useless! Do you think the energy released from the burning of the core is defensible by you? As Domenech's arrogant laughter sounded, all of the golden weapons were sucked into the fire giant's mouth, and nothing was left. The powerful suction force was still there, and all the trees, rocks, and soil were being sucked into its mouth like dust. Even a huge mountain broke off from its base and got sucked into the giant's mouth. Emperor Yasin, who was quite close to the giant, was targeted by the suction force. He wasn't able to get away even though he unleashed all of his warrior energy. His body shivered, and it slowly moved toward the giant's mouth. Ha ha ha! I burned more than half of my sun-class core. Even though my strength will fall for more than 50% when I get out, it is worth it. Once I kill you, my nemesis, my future progress will be very smooth. Since Emperor Yasin was locked down by the suction force, Domenech was surprised for a few seconds before he tried to burn more of his core to increase the suction force. Soon, like a tornado, everything close by was being sucked into the giant's mouth. Emperor Yasin was getting closer and closer to the giant's mouth. The speed was accelerating. Finally, after more than 10 minutes, the golden warrior energy flame on Emperor Yasin dimmed considerably. It was only about 2 meters around him. As the fire giant roared again, Emperor Yasin was instantly swallowed by it. Ha ha ha! Yasin, you dead! Fire giant! Hellfire! Melt him! Dashes of golden light were being shot out of the giant's mouth. But it was useless. As the origin of the golden light moved from the mouth of the giant to the throat and then to the stomach, the golden light gradually disappeared. Ha ha ha! Yasin, you are finally dead. Ha ha ha! I killed you. The sad part is that you are so arrogant that you challenged me when you aren't a sun-class lord yet. Although I burned through a lot of my core, it is worth it. Domenech stood in midair and laughed crazily. He wasn't in that much of a better position himself. His white robe was torn and chopped, and there were streaks of blood by his mouth. He looked spiritless, and his long curly hair was wet and stuck to his body. He didn't look like that dominating and powerful mage from a few days ago. However, he killed Emperor Yasin. It was all worth it. But at this moment, a familiar voice suddenly sounded from the belly of the fire giant. It was filled with confidence and power. Are you getting this naive after 26 years? You disappointed me. Do you think you can kill me this easily? Before it finished, a mythical level pressure appeared as if a holy dragon showed itself. The pressure dispersed into the area from the stomach of the fire giant. Dragon Fist, Dragon's Determination. Instantly, the fire giant let out a series of cries as golden dragons that were more than 100 meters long dashed out of its belly one after another. As if a nuclear bomb exploded inside the fire giant's stomach, its body was instantly crushed and torn apart. Dragon Fist? Are you still not dead? H! Domenech screamed as a desperate expression appeared on his face. His fear of Emperor Yasin reached the climax, and he was about to collapse mentally. Whoosh! Domenech burned his sun-class core. He no longer wanted to fight. Instead, he tried to escape immediately. Boom! Bam! As he dashed away and disappeared into afar, the fire giant that was more than 1,000 meters tall was destroyed. Its body broke into pieces, and clouds of fire and big chunks of rocks fell down the sky like meteors. The scene looked like the end of the world. With golden warrior energy flame around him, Emperor Yasin stood in mid-air majestically. However, he wasn't intact. Most of his robe turned burned brown, and his right sleeve disappeared, revealing his right arm that had cracked skin on it. It was clear that Emperor Yasin wasn't as dominating as he said to be. Domenech's final strike did some harm to him. This should be enough for the message. I will let you live and use your mouth to pass out the message. Tell that coward Juninho about what happened. You dared to attack a god's favorite child and kill a red-robed deacon. You will be punished one day. As he looked at the direction that Domenech escaped, a confident smile appeared on Emperor Yasin's face. If Domenech were still here, he would be able to figure out some information from this smile. It is about time for me to go. Emperor Yasin clenched his right hand. A dash of golden energy flashed by, and the injuries on his right arm were instantly healed. As he turned around and was about to leave, he suddenly detected something and looked in the north direction. As he tried to listen carefully, he murmured to himself, "Huh? Strange. Is it my illusion?" He detected some spatial fluctuation a second ago, but he couldn't sense anything once he tried again. This small world has abundant natural elements and treasures. It is like heaven. Too bad that it only opens once in 20 years, and only a maximum of 40 people can enter at once. If I can control this place, I would be able to cultivate a dominating army that could sweep through the continent. Emperor Yasin was very ambitious. However, he knew that no one could control this place. There had been many masters who explored this world. Even the continental martial saint, Maradona, had tried to break through the invisible energy barrier and failed. Many conspirators and schemers tried to get access to this small world, and they all failed as well. This space belongs to the gods and not humans, Emperor Yasin sighed. His body blurred as the golden warrior energy flame burned more vigorously. Then he suddenly disappeared. After Emperor Yasin was gone, spatial ripples appeared 100 meters away. Then, a huge and majestic throne slowly appeared. A long black-haired handsome young man was sitting on the throne. On his shoulder, there was a cute raccoon-like creature that had white eyes, brownish-red fur, and a black and white striped tail. At the moment, this young man's right elbow was resting on the armrest, and his head was resting on his right palm. He looked at the direction where Emperor Yasin took off and pondered. Damn! The throne of chaos could really penetrate through the invisible energy barrier of the mythical palace. I came to this small world without having to rely on the elemental altar and the elemental gates. Does this mean that I could come and go from this place as I wish? This ability alone meant that the throne was priceless. There were all kinds of natural treasures hidden in this place. It didn't matter how bad the masters in the outside world wanted. They had to wait for 20 years before fighting for the 40 spots on the elemental altar. However, from now on, Faye would be able to come and go from this place with ease. Like his backyard garden. He could get any of the natural treasures in this small world. He pretty much had a gold mine. Squeak! Squeak! Little raccoon on Faye's shoulder suddenly started to make noises. It jumped around and pointed at the pit on the ground. It was the deepest pit created by the body parts of the fire giant after it got obliterated by Emperor Yasin. Huh? Could it be that there is a treasure here? Faye thought as he moved the throne of chaos into the pit using his mind control. The king knew that Little Raccoon was known as the treasure-seeking beast. It was ultra-sensitive to treasures. The fact that it was this anxious meant it discovered something significant. In the deepest part of this pit, there was an orange fire that continued to burn. The fire was about the size of a fist, and what was strange about it was that the flame was at the room temperature. No extra heat could be sensed from it. What is this? You mean this is the treasure? Faye turned around and asked Little Raccoon that was jumping around on his shoulders. The little guy nodded and pointed at the fire with its paws. The way it looked like this fire was similar to how men looked like beautiful women. However, it seemed like it was a little fearful of this fire. It didn't dare to approach it. Let me see what it is. Faye walked down the throne. He covered his hands with a layer of silver energy before reaching out for the fire cautiously. When he grabbed onto the orange fire, he still didn't feel any burning sensation. Instead, it was warm and smooth. It made Faye feel like he was in a hot spring. This should be the core crystal of a Sun-class lord. Faye realized that there was a red crystal-like matter in the center of the fire. It was about the size of half a fist, and it was a little soft like hard jelly. Faye was very familiar with the energy contained in it. It was very similar to the power of the fire giant that Domenech just summoned. As soon as Faye returned to this small world, he first followed Emperor Yasin and Domenech and watched their battle from not too far away. By using the powerful stealth ability of the Throne of Chaos, he was able to hide less than 1,000 meters away and view the ferocious battle. His barbarian character was very sensitive to energy surges, especially when the energies were at a high level. Therefore, he still had a vivid memory of the energy the fire giant showcased. Faye was almost sure that the red crystal in his hand was the core of that fire giant. Domenech said that he burned his Sun-class core. After he got defeated by Emperor Yasin's Dragon Fist, he didn't have time to ignite the Sun-class core fully and had to escape in a hurry. The remaining Sun-class core was ditched and fell onto the ground alongside the body parts of the fire giant. Faye almost instantly guessed the origin of this red crystal. He wasn't far off from the truth. This is the core of a Sun-class lord. It is a high-level energy source, and it also contains the understanding of the natural laws from the perspective of a Sun-class lord. It is very rare. If a full moon elite got his or her hands on this, they would be able to acquire the energy and the understanding of the natural laws, instantly becoming a Sun-class lord themselves without having to cultivate for dozens or even hundreds of years. Too bad that Faye couldn't cultivate warrior energy or magic energy. Therefore, this item was useless to him. However, I can keep it for the warriors of Chambord. Once someone reaches peak full moon, they would be able to use it. Wait, Emperor Yasin stayed here for several minutes. Why didn't he discover this crystal? Did he not sense it? Or is this below him? Faye thought. Whatever. It is useless thinking about them. Faye shook his head and decided not to try to understand the minds of people like Emperor Yasin. As he was about to seal this core crystal up using the methods that Akira taught him and place it into his storage ring, little raccoon that squatted on Faye's shoulder suddenly made its move. After carefully observing the situation and realizing that this core crystal wasn't dangerous, it jumped onto Faye's hand and took a bit out of it as if it was a pine nut. Puff! Small dashes of fire instantly jetted out of this little guy's ears, mouth, and nostrils. It rolled its eyes and staggered before falling on Faye's hand as if it was drunk. Huh? This little guy can directly consume core crystals. Faye discovered that although this little guy was drunk, it wasn't in danger. After eating a small portion of the core crystal, its fur became smoother and shinier as if it bathed in olive oil, and its chubby body became even fatter. Damn! Such a greedy little guy. You deserve it. Faye laughed and scolded little raccoon since it couldn't even move. It just looked at him with blurry eyes. Since it was little raccoon that discovered this core crystal, a small portion belonged to it. After returning to the Throne of Chaos, Faye suddenly sensed two energy surges about 100 kilometers to the west. This surge... Shit! As if Faye realized something, his face changed color. The Throne of Chaos lightly shivered, and Faye, little raccoon, and the throne all disappeared. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Yasin! I, Domenech, swear that I will make you pay. I guarantee it with the honor of my family name. As soon as Domenech escaped, he ran like a lunatic. He feared everything he saw since he felt like Yasin was everywhere around him. Therefore, this fear of Yasin made him burn his remaining Sun-class core even more, and he dashed away at an insane speed. After he traveled for more than several hundred kilometers and could no longer sense the familiar energy surge behind him, he finally calmed down a little. Damn! I lost so much this trip. More than half of my Sun-class core is used. If I didn't suck in pure fire elements along the way, I might have dropped below the realm of Sun-class. Why? Why? Why is this bastard, Yasin, this strong? How can he battle against a Sun-class lord as a peak full moon elite? he thought. Domenech thought that he would be able to defeat his nemesis after advancing into Sun class, but he was beaten like a homeless dog. Although he was angry, he was more confused. It was rare for a peak full moon elite to defeat a Sun class lord without using any external help such god-tier combat weapons. Fortunately, this is the core region in the mythical palace. The natural elements are abundant here, and the natural laws are very clear. I should be able to recover after 10 days of cultivation. Humph! Once I return to the Leon Empire, I will inform Emperor Juninho. The troops of the Empire will move north and easily wipe out Zenith. As he thought about that, he slowed down and looked for a hidden place to cultivate. Suddenly, a subtle yet gloomy energy surge attracted his attention. Someone is trying to advance into Sun class here? This power. Terrifying. It is gloomy as an abyss and deadly. What is this? Undead energy? Not exactly. Who is it? He was intrigued by this unique energy surge. He used a stealth technique and tried to move closer to the mountain in front of him. He saw all the masters who entered this small world, but he didn't spot anyone who was on the verge of advancing to Sun class. Who is it? Who has so much accumulation that he or she is confident in advancing? From the look of it, it seems like this person is about to succeed. Is another Sun class lord going to be born? Domenech felt lucky. He was a Sun class lord and he knew a lot of secret techniques for Sun class lords. If he could entice this person who was about to become a Sun class lord and promise this person a lot of rewards using the name of the Leon Empire, he might be able to convince this person to join him. If they could coordinate well, there was still the possibility that he could kill Emperor Yasin in this small world. With this idea on his mind, Domenech carefully approached the mountain. He was trying to befriend this person so he didn't interrupt the advancement process. However, when Domenech got within 100 meters of the mountain, he finally saw the person sitting on the platform on the summit. Huh? It is him? With clouds of black smoke around him. This mid-aged man was wearing a black robe, a light armor, and a strange kitty half-mask. This person was the mysterious master who was very close to the king of Chambord. Domenech's plan instantly changed. That bastard of a king! He forced me to take on the crime of attacking a god's favorite child, and that bad luck continued when Yasin chased after me. That ant-like nobody put me in such a terrible situation. This mysterious master is very close with the king of Chambord. If he successfully becomes a Sun class lord, he might come after me first. After thinking about that, dangerous thoughts appeared in this vicious white-robed mage's head. I can't keep him around. If he becomes a Sun class lord, there will only be more trouble in the future. During the advancement process, one had to transform the body structure before the elevation in the energy level. This process shouldn't be interrupted. Otherwise, the warrior energy or magic energy would turn chaotic, breaking loose within one's body and destroying the energy connections and internal organs. The result of that would be deadly. Therefore, if Domenech attacked this person and made this person lose concentration, then this person would be killed. He. Please don't blame me for killing you when you are weak. If you want to blame someone, blame the king of Chambord for trying to mess with me. A vicious and cruel expression appeared on Domenech's face as he gathered his magic energy and waved his wand. 6 dashes of fire blades appeared, and they targeted Hazelbank, who was in the process of returning to the realm of Sun class. Ha ha ha! Die! Domenech laughed cruelly. As the fire blades dashed toward Hazelbank, who couldn't move at the moment, changes occurred. Silver ripples appeared in the air, and a huge silver throne that was about 2 meters in each dimension appeared in the path of the fire blades. The figure sitting in the throne stood up abruptly and reached out his hand, crushing the 6 fire blades easily. It is you, the king of Chambord. Ha ha ha! How dare you appear in front of me? After the initial surprise, Domenech got excited and shouted. The murderous spirit could be seen in his eyes. He didn't know that Faye had left this small world and returned, so he wasn't too shocked. Hey, long-haired old bastard. We met again so soon. However, you don't look so good, Faye said with a smile on his face. As he stood still on the throne of chaos, he calmly greeted Domenech. I'm not in a great condition, but your condition will be terrible soon. As if he saw the person who killed his parents, Domenech locked his eyes onto Faye as he approached. The thick, murderous spirit could even freeze the air. What? You want to kill me? Faye didn't back off. Instead, he asked with a strange smile on his face. A layer of silver energy enveloped him. It even protected little raccoon that was still half drunk, and the throne of chaos under his feet against the sharp, murderous spirit. Kill you? I just want to crush a disgusting bug in front of me. Domenech replied coldly. Crisp, crackling noises sounded as if the strong, murderous spirit from Domenech was breaking the space like glass. Faye shrugged and said, Really? If I remember correctly, you said similar things last time and got beat up hard. Aren't you afraid that the same thing will happen again? Hey, to be honest, I truly admired the legendary Sunclass Lords before. However, your performance sucked. I really feel bad for other Sunclass Lords whom you share the title with. You still want to provoke me? Do you want to die faster? The murderous spirit in Domenech's eyes reached a peak. At this time, strands of red light had already formed a huge net around Faye. It felt like a poisonous spider had created a trap for its prey. Pitiful. Bug. You will experience my anger. You will pay for what you said. Before Domenech could finish speaking, he waved his wand, and the thin strands of red light brightened up. At the same time, the net contracted with heat that could burn through anything. If thick iron plates were in the way, they would be quietly cut into pieces. Boom! Faye raised his arm and punched out. The silver fist mark passed through the red light net and couldn't do anything to it. This is so sad. Kid, you are weaker than a bug. Your pitiful strength couldn't delay the approaching of the Grim Reaper, Domenech said as he was in no hurry to kill Faye. With resentment and hatred in his green eyes, he was enjoying the desperate and fear on his opponent's face. It was the only way that he could vent his anger about Faye. However, the king was still calm. He continued to punch out one strike after another. The silver fist marks that could easily break mountains were useless against the net. It is useless. King of Shambord, your strength couldn't stop the death-fire net from contracting. In a minute or so, the strands of red light will touch your body. They will slowly cut through your head, neck, arms, legs, bones, organs, and more. You will slowly enjoy the dying process. Ha ha ha. If your willpower is strong, though, you might get to see how your body would be turned into pieces of flesh. A mocking smile appeared on Domenech's face. At this moment, a bit of anxiousness appeared in Faye's eyes. Domenech saw this, and he became more and more excited. Whoosh! 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 Faye took out a strong bow from his storage ring. He placed several arrows onto the bow and shot them at the connection points of the net. Although the arrows hit their targets, they were each split into 4 equal parts by the crossing strands of red light. However, since the strands of red light were so thin, the arrows didn't break apart until they flew 300 meters past the red net. The strands of red light were too sharp. Even the arrows made from demons' remains couldn't affect them. Except for God-tier combat weapons and semi-God-tier combat weapons, nothing else could break my death-fire net. Haha. Just wait for your death patiently. Once I kill you, I will leave the small world with your head. With your head in my hand, I will then kill everyone at the Shambord Kingdom, including children and elderlies. Ha ha ha. I will put an end to Shambord once for all. Faye frowned. He didn't say anything. Instead, he took out a huge door-sized blade from his storage ring and chopped forward with it fiercely. Whoosh! 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 A series of tearing noises sounded. The huge blade that was also made from demons' remains got turned into many small pieces as it passed through the red net, and those pieces fell to the ground. Faye was shocked and instantly stopped himself from moving forward. The difference between mid-tier half-moon and Sunclass was uncalculatable. Even if Faye summoned the dual swords, Bulkathos children, he might not be able to break the strands of red light. Also, the pair of combat weapons manager Abramovich gifted him couldn't do anything at this moment as well. Summon Immortal King's Soul Cage? Faye frowned and shook his head. Even if the strands of red light couldn't cut through this legendary armor of the barbarian tribe, it didn't protect Faye's entire body. At the moment like this, Faye sensed the power of the most talented warrior of Zenith, Emperor Yasin. This emperor was able to defeat this Sun-class lord easily as a Moon-class elite. Probably only people like him could solve the problem that Faye was facing. It is useless. Just stop struggling and experience the death. Domenech was feeling too good about himself after seeing how his opponent ran out of tactics. Really? Faye, who had been frowning, suddenly smiled. Old bastard, your net sure is powerful. But I'm not a dumb fish. You can't catch me. Squeak. Squeak. Little raccoon grabbed onto Faye's hair with one paw and stood on his shoulder, sticking its tongue out and making faces. Then, something magnificent happened. A series of ripples appeared. Then Faye, little raccoon, and the throne all quickly disappeared from the red net like phantoms. The smile on Domenech's face instantly froze. What is this technique? I didn't even sense the use of energy. Domenech was shocked. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was no warrior energy surge or magic energy surge. Like a busted bubble, Faye disappeared completely. As a Sun-class lord, even he couldn't sense where the king of Shambord went. This is impossible. How could a low-life bug get away from my senses? What is going on? He sent out his magic energy and tried to detect the surroundings. Every time it touched something, it would create a little echo that could only be sensed by him. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. The expression on Domenech's face turned from surprise to shock, and then from shock to rage. He couldn't understand how a mid-tier half-moon elite could disappear from his death-fire net, and he also couldn't comprehend the fact that the king of Shambord got away from his precise detection. You escaped fast. Next time, I will kill you right away. Domenech thought to himself as he focused back onto Hazelbank, who was in the process of advancing. In order to conceal the undead energy that would be surging around him during the advancement process, the undead mage placed all 6 god-fooling badges onto himself, and he put more than a dozen stealth array formations around him. Therefore, Domenech couldn't tell that Hazelbank was an undead mage at the moment. If Domenech recognized the undead energy, he would have reconsidered his position. The power and the domination of undead mages was a topic that was forbidden on the Azeroth continent. If 2 mages of the same level were battling, the undead mage would usually win. Undead energy, known as the magic energy that could threaten the gods, couldn't be easily comprehended and imagined by ordinary people. From legends and propaganda of the Holy Church, people thought that undead mages had numerous death techniques that could cause nightmares. Every single undead mage was painted to be vicious, mysterious, and devil-like. Therefore, a lot of people would get scared before battling undead mages, putting them in a disadvantage mentally. Except for the Holy Church, no one else wanted to seek undead mages as their enemies actively. Therefore, because Domenech was unaware of Hazelbank's real identity, he treated this man as an ordinary mage. As Domenech was about to attack again and stop Hazelbank from becoming a Sun-class lord, a familiar energy surge appeared behind him. Before he could react, a palm laid on his back, and an energy crushed his magic energy shield and entered his body. Eh! Puff! Domenech spat out a mouthful of blood. He then immediately got away from the sneak attack and appeared 100 meters away. He turned around and roared, "King of Shambord, you are dead! Damn it! Ah! Despicable cheater! I swear I will kill you! Haha! Too bad that I couldn't kill you with that. Hey, although you are old and rusty, your reaction speed sure is fast." Faye stood at where Domenech was at a moment ago and teased. He shook his hand and waved a piece of cloth he got from Domenech's robe. "You injured me! How dare you! Die!" Domenech shouted as if he was a dog that got its tail stepped on. He waved his hand, and numerous fire arrows appeared in the sky. They dashed down at Faye like vicious bees, and the energy hidden in each arrow could turn a mid-tier half-moon elite into a cloud of blood mist. Huh? These are magic tracing arrows? Faye frowned and sensed the terrifying property of these arrows. The so-called magic tracing arrows had one key feature. They wouldn't stop until they struck their targets. Before that, they would follow the targets wherever they went. Faye's Amazon character mastered a similar technique, and that was why he was sensitive to it. Faye clenched his fists, and Colossus Blade and Mythical Sword, the two swords in the set, Bull Kathos Children, appeared in his hands after blood-red lights flashed by. Faye, who was standing on the throne of chaos, turned his body and swung the swords, creating a silver dragon that was about 4 meters long from his silver energy. As the dragon roared, it dashed toward the magic tracing arrows that were coming at him like hungry locusts. This was the most powerful sword technique of the barbarian whirlwind. Boom, boom, boom. The silver dragon collided with the arrows. Like a dragon that ran into a bunch of ants, it swirled around and triggered thousands of fire elemental magic tracing arrows, making them explode. Bright flames appeared in the blue sky one after another, and it was as beautiful as a grand firework. However, the terrifying energy hidden in this beautiful scene would terrify any of the half-moon elites, even though the silver dragon was strong. There were way too many magic tracing arrows. Ants could devour an elephant if there were enough of them. Soon, the silver dragon started to collapse. It turned into dashes of broken sword energies before shooting in all directions. After that, the magic tracing arrows that covered the sunlight in the area dashed at Faye mercilessly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. All the arrows had one target. This concentration of energy was strong enough to make this region of the small world shake a little. Boom, 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 boom. In the next moment, tens of thousands of magic tracing arrows collided, and the violent energy waves expanded outward rapidly as if huge dominoes started to fall on top of each other. Dark and thick clouds appeared in the sky, and the heated fire elemental energy and the cold death sensation was breathtaking. The vast amount of pure fire elements in the air pushed other elements away, destabilizing this area. Thin black cracks appeared in the space, and it looked like the small world was going to be torn apart. The terrifying energy surge enveloped Faye. As if Faye and his throne were both shattered into pieces, Domenech could no longer sense the king's aura. Domenech stood in midair and waited for everything to calm down. After he carefully detected the surroundings, a wicked yet still unsatisfied smile appeared on his face. He murmured, "Too bad that I let you die easily. I couldn't capture you alive and torture you. What a pity. It looks like you sure are old. Although your body is still functional, you are deaf and blind." The familiar voice sounded, and what happened to him a moment ago occurred again. An energy appeared behind Domenech and was about to break through his magic energy shield. Domenech only realized what was going on after Faye's voice sounded. Both mad and scared, this mage instantly moved 100 meters away, and he strengthened the magic energy shield around him. Ha ha ha! A person shouldn't make the same mistake twice, but you got sneak attacked by me twice? Faye waved another piece of cloth in his hand and mocked. "I think you should get changed before fighting me. Your open back robe doesn't suit you. You are old, your skin is loose and wrinkly. Also," Domenech was enraged. His white robe was ripped by Faye twice, and his pants were almost destroyed as well. When the cold wind blew by, his back felt a little chilly. After hearing Faye's vicious remarks, he spat out a mouthful of black blood, and he almost fell from the sky. "How did you do it? With your strength, you shouldn't be able to travel through the space willingly. You must be relying on a treasure. If I'm not wrong, it should be this unique throne, right?" Domenech calmed down after he put on another robe. The anger in his eyes disappeared, and he controlled his emotion. Being able to reach the Sun-class realm before he was 100 years old, Domenech wasn't an idiot. On the contrary, he was a talented genius. However, he got really unlucky since he came to the level 36 region. Emperor Yasin chased him for 10 days, and he underestimated Faye for a moment and got hit twice. Now he finally thought it through. He readjusted his mentality and started to view this young king as a worthy opponent. At this moment, Faye frowned seriously. He teased and provoked Domenech because he wanted this mage to lose his mind and logical thinking. It was the only way that the king could buy more time from the Sun-class lord so that Hazelbank could successfully return to the realm of Sun-class. But now, this Sun-class lord came to his senses and changed his mentality. Therefore, the king was in danger. Old man, worry about yourself first. The people who are in this small world witnessed your killing of the red-robed Deacon Pellegrini. Once the information gets out, you will be chased and hunted down by the execution department of the Holy Church. Do you think you are invincible as a Sun-class lord? The execution department of the Holy Church has killed more than a few Sun-class lords in recent years. I'm afraid that the entire Leon Empire will be wiped out due to your stupidity. Fei changed up the topic and still tried to affect his opponent's mind. He was trying to buy time for the undead mage. Haha! Pathetic! You are only a god's favorite child who grew up in safety. What do you know? How many members of the Holy Church have I killed over the years? Quite a few. Domenech laughed. You know nothing. Fei raised his eyebrows. From what this royal mage of the Leon Empire said, Fei understood a lot of shocking information. It looks like you care about this person who is trying to advance to the Sun-class realm? Too bad that he needs at least an hour to finish going through the process. I can kill him with my finger if I want to. King of Chambord, do you think that you can delay me for an hour? After calming down, Domenech demonstrated the demeanor of the former number 1 talented mage in the region within 1 million kilometers of the Leon Empire. He easily pinpointed Fei's weakness. We shall see. Fei suddenly looked up and smiled. His swords lightly vibrated, and the vibration noise resonated in the sky. At that moment, his aura suddenly turned heavy and firm like a mountain as he stood in between Domenech and Hazel Bank. Domenech sensed the change on the King of Chambord, and it was what he wanted to see. He started to chant a mystic and obscure spell, and the fire elements nearby were all pulled toward him. 10 solid magic arrows that were each a meter long and a thumb thick formed in front of Domenech. Then, the 10 arrows slowly came together and merged. In the end, there was one colossal arrow that looked more like a giant spear. Although it was made from magic energy, it had a metal glare to it and looked real. Domenech lightly pushed his palms forward gracefully. Whoosh! The contrast between the gentle movement of Domenech and the fierce strike was shocking, and the huge fire elemental magic arrow dashed toward Fei while leaving behind a series of afterimages. This strike almost ignited the air in its pathway. The strong wind fluttered Fei's long black hair, and his clothes were making loud flapping noises. Felt like a huge mountain was falling on him. However, with the 2 swords crossed in front of his chest, he didn't back down. If he merely moved half a step to either left or right, he would have dodged this terrifying arrow. However, if he did that, then it would accurately hit Hazelbank, who was in the process of returning to the realm of Sunclass and couldn't move. Tink! Fei knocked the 2 swords onto each other, and a crisp metal colliding sound resonated in the area. Then, Fei shouted, and layers of colorful lights appeared around him. In the next moment, the level 8 elite item, Fei's murderous helmet, and the level 7 set item, Immortal King's Soul Cage, sacred armor appeared on him. In the unique and powerful armor and helmet, the image of a barbarian warrior totem that was more than 100 meters tall appeared behind Fei, who was standing on the throne of chaos. At this moment, the king's cape fluttered in the wind, and his aura reached the peak. It made Domenech feel like this young king was invincible. Boom! 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 As soon as the 2 swords were placed together, a silver energy rushed out of the swords and formed a huge silver cross, and this silver cross blocked the red arrow. After a moment of silence, destructive energy spilled around. It was supposed to spill in all directions, but Fei blocked the residual energy that was supposed to dash past him with his body. Not a single bit of chaotic energy passed him and affected the undead mage who was trying to advance. Fei was willing to block all the dangers for Hazelbank with his body. He wasn't going to let anything happen to the undead mage at this critical moment. Although Chambord would get a powerful Sun-class lord if he could buy enough time for the undead mage, he was doing it because Hazelbank was his ally and his friend. The battle created strong winds. On Fei's shoulder, the furry and chubby little raccoon almost got blown away. It grabbed onto Fei's side hair with its paws, and it swung in the air a little ball. However, it didn't let out a single squeak. This intelligent little guy bit its lips and didn't want to disturb the king who was in battle. It was afraid that its squeaks would affect the king's iron will. Drip! A drop of blood landed on the throne of chaos. Even though the barbarian was tough, Fei got injured when he tried to fight against a Sun-class lord heads-on. Although he had protection from the items from Diablo World, his hands were still injured. Blood flowed out of the wounds on his hands, and the drops of blood dripped down his gauntlets and swords. All right, although more than half of my Sun-class core was used, and my strength decreased significantly, the fact that you took that strike from me and didn't get killed is enough for you to be proud of, Domenech said as he observed Fei with a surprised expression on his face. Even though he expected that his opponent might be able to handle his strike, he didn't think that the king of Chambord could take care of his attack without paying a hefty price. Really? I'm always a proud person. Use all the skills and techniques you know. Let me see if you, a Sun-class lord, can get me to back off, Fei said firmly. His swords were sharp, his hair was long and smooth, and his temperament was graceful. His black eyes emitted a light, signaling others that he was at his absolute peak where his spirit, mind, body, and will were in harmony. The barbarians were stronger when their opponents were tougher. Fei demonstrated this principle to the extreme. Not sure when, but his barbarian warrior totem behind him got a little brighter as well. Okay, to be honest, I'm starting to admire you. You are even more capable than Yasin when he was in your age. I want to know how many of my strikes can you take. Domenech got calmer as he sensed the battle hungriness from Fei. A dragon would get mad if a dog challenged it. However, if a creature on its level challenged it, it would only respect its opponent and give it all it had. This was the reason for Domenech's change. Before, he saw Fei as a bug that was way below his league. But now, he saw Fei as a person who was close to his level and could threaten him. The power from the anger of the gods. Fire elements, the ones that could melt through everything. Listen to my plead and let my hands feel your existence. Let our anger crush all the evil that is in front of us. As if a god was murmuring, Domenech's chant resonated in the sky. Slowly but surely, pure fire elements in nature dashed toward him and circled him at an impressive speed. Slowly, this number 1 royal mage of the Leon Empire was enveloped by a thick orange beam of light. Fei chugged down a bottom of full rejuvenation potion. He also gave Little Raccoon a bottle. Although Fei and Little Raccoon looked causal, they were getting serious at this moment after seeing the power contained in the upcoming strike. Condemnation from the gods. Pure. Sword of Fire Judgment. As Domenech stated calmly, a gigantic fire sword that was more than 1,000 meters long dashed out of the thick orange light beam. There were numerous light rings and flares on the body of this sword, and it stole the spotlight. The sky that was still bright a moment ago looked as dark as an abyss in contrast to this sword. This sword was too powerful. This was the result of pushing magic energy to the extreme. Magic spells were able to borrow energy from nature and deal a level of damage that was far beyond the level of the practitioner. In this regard, warriors seemed weaker. In the next moment, this fire sword chopped down. The orange flames shattered the sky and struck toward Fei with a destructive presence. When the sword lightly tilted, Fei felt like an invisible energy pulled his body, and he felt like the air around him was as thick as glue. He had a hard time moving his body, and he felt like the sword would land on him accurately, didn't matter which direction he moved in. The intense sense of danger stimulated Fei's nerves, making him feel like many iron needles were poking him. Is this the real power of a Sun-class lord? Fei was at his peak, and he wasn't willing to back off. Instead of backing off, he dashed forward by moving the throne of chaos using his mind. He was planning to dodge the sword by attacking Domenech, who was controlling it. This seemed like the best option at the moment. Domenech was inside the body of this fire sword, and fire could be seen rushing out of his eyes, ear, mouth, and nostrils. He was on another level. He didn't react to Fei's movement. Instead, he used all his energy to control the sword and chop it down. The closer Fei was to the body of the sword, the more pressure he felt. When he was about 100 meters away from the fire sword, Faye felt the terrifying heat and Domenech's murderous spirit through Immortal King's soul cage, sacred armor. The tough skin of the barbarian started to crack like a dried-up river bed. Faye, a mid-tier half-moon elite, couldn't deal with this amount of power. Emperor Yasin was able to battle a Sun-class lord as a Moon-class elite. It was a miracle, and not everyone could do it. Time seemed to have slowed down, and it looked like everything was in slow motion. With the two swords crossed in front of his chest again, Faye pushed the throne of chaos toward Domenech with a determined expression on his face. This scene looked like a moth to a flame. It felt like Faye would end up being burned to ashes. Too bad, King of Shambord. Although you are a genius, you are inferior to Yasin. Therefore, you will get killed. With flames around his body, Domenech didn't look like a human. His voice was emotionless like a god, cold and clear. Killing geniuses is something that is both exciting and helpless. Sword of Fire Judgment. Strike. As soon as Domenech finished speaking, the speed of the sword turned from slow to fast. The orange lights around the blade shone brightly, and the lethal energy dashed in all directions, making the air ripple and bubble as if it were melted cheese. If a metal plate were near it, it would have been burned through already. Right now, Faye was less than 20 meters away from Domenech. Behind him, Hazelbank was at the most critical moment in the advancement process. His aura was changing, and his body and energy form were both becoming stronger. However, he needed a little more time and space. That little demand felt like an unclimbable mountain, blocking the path of success. In face of the destructive power, Faye knew that he couldn't get closer to Domenech anymore. Therefore, he made a decision and raised the crossing swords over his head, roaring and unleashing the strike that was supposed to land on Domenech. There was no explosion or loud noise. Like a godly pillar, this huge orange fire sword slowly tilted toward Faye. Both Faye and the Throne of Chaos felt small and insignificant in front of it. Colossus Blade and Mythical Sword crossed above Faye's head and blocked the orange fire sword. However, these two set items that were used by the legendary king of barbarians, Bulkathos, started to get hot. As if they were soaked in blood, many bright red patterns shone on the bodies of the swords, and these patterns projected large runes into the air, fighting Domenech's Sun-class technique, Sword of Fire Judgment. Due to the insane heat energy coming from the orange fire sword, the two swords in Faye's hands turned burning hot, and it felt like they were going to melt at any time. Faye could clearly tell that the durability of the two swords was dropping at a fast pace. The 3-digit numbers quickly turned into 2-digit numbers, and the 2-digit numbers were going to become 1-digit numbers soon. They can last about 30 seconds. Faye's hands were turning black and were getting burned because of the insanely hot swords. The metal gauntlets soon turned red hot as well, and hissing noises sounded as a burned meat smell appeared. Streaks of black smoke were coming out of the small openings on the gauntlets. Faye's hands were almost completely cooked, and the unbearable pain was stimulating his brain aggressively. However, Faye's eyes couldn't be brighter. His hands that were holding onto the two swords didn't shiver, and his aura didn't change as well. Squeak! Squeak! Little raccoon that was standing on Faye's shoulder looked anxious and angry. It let out a series of cries as it was in a state of hesitation. However, that hesitation only lasted about 3 seconds. 3 seconds later, it jumped onto Faye's head and reached out its furry front paws, trying to block the orange fire sword that was crushing down on Faye. Hey, be careful. It is a sword made from pure fire elements. You will die, Faye shouted. He was shocked by what Little Raccoon was doing. However, something mystic happened next. Little Raccoon that was supposed to be burned into ashes placed its front paws onto the orange fire sword. The fire sword that was destroying Faye's magic swords didn't even burn off a single hair on Little Raccoon's body. Squeak! Squeak! Little Raccoon held onto its breath and tried its best to push this orange fire sword away. Its muscles were bulging, and its eyes were wide open. Although the orange fire sword couldn't injure it by heat, the sword still contained a ton of physical force. Therefore, even though this little guy gave it all it had, it was too small and couldn't help Faye much. However, Faye was touched. This creature, that was useless in Kane's words, displayed its loyalty at this moment. Faye was touched and felt like his love toward it didn't go to waste. It felt like the time was passing by slowly, but it was going by rapidly in reality. Standing on the throne of chaos, Faye tried his best to counter the force exerted by the orange fire sword, but he was pushed back slowly a meter after another. The insane heat coming from this sword was burning his forearms and elbows now. Even though his forearms and elbows had the protection of the items from Diablo World, they were turning black and dry. Ha ha ha! King of Shambord, how much longer can you last? If you try to move away now, you may still survive. Inside the hilt of the orange fire sword, the orange fire was coming out of Domenech's eyes, ears, mouth, and nostrils. He looked vicious, and his tone was emotionless. I also want to know that, Faye replied with mystic lights in his eyes. Get killed only to save a subordinate? Should I say that you are dumb or heroic? Too bad. Even if you die, you couldn't save him. If you swear loyalty to me, I will let you go, and you can become one of the most powerful people in the Leon Empire after the Emperor himself and me. I'm sure that the royal family of the Leon Empire is going to treat you well. At this point, Domenech started to admire this young man in front of him, and he was trying to recruit Faye. Every single word from him was enticing, especially in this situation. He would influence a lot of iron-willed warriors at this point. Ha ha ha! What a joke! Even the little demon beast on my head knows how to fight back. As the king of Shambord, do you think I will back down? The fact that you, the #1 royal mage of the Leon Empire, said such things made me question your intelligence. Domenech, your little tricks won't work. Faye knew that his opponent was trying to mess with his mind. However, he had been through too many dangerous situations in Diablo World, and he had walked on mountains of corpses and swam in rivers of blood. He was no longer an ordinary university student from Earth. Instead, he was a king who had a ton of perseverance. He wouldn't waver in such bloody fights. Okay, I didn't expect to see such an iron-willed warrior from Zenith after that reckless Yasin. Since you don't want to surrender, I will have to kill a genius. Die! After knowing that he couldn't recruit this king, Domenech made up his mind and unleashed all the strength that he was holding back. Instantly, the orange fire sword that was more than 1,000 meters long shivered, and the lights around it glowed even brighter as the energy exploded. Crack! Crack! The durability of the two swords in Faye's hands reached 0. The mysterious red runes the two swords projected disappeared, and the yellow sword bodies started to crack. The weapons used by the legendary immortal king still weren't willing to be melted. Instead, they broke into small pieces. Faye's weapons were destroyed, and his opponent's strike was coming at him quickly. Squeak! 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 The bones in Little Raccoon's front legs were shattered, and its front legs turned soft. Then, it fainted and fell onto the throne of chaos. Faye could still escape from the orange fire sword if he wanted to at this moment using the power of the Thorn of Chaos. However, Faye decided to summon the two strangely shaped combat weapons that Manager Abramovich gifted him. He held onto the two weapons using his hands that were severely burned, and he continued to fight back. However, as soon as the weapons touched the orange fire sword, they broke. The expression on Faye's face didn't even change. He summoned a huge sword made from demon's remains. Crack! This sword broke. A huge axe made from demon's remains. Crack! This axe broke. Blade! Crack! Spear! Crack! Shield! Crack! In just a few seconds, all the weapons in Faye's storage ring broke. After all the mortal weapons couldn't deal with the orange fire sword that was made by a Sun-class lord. As soon as they collided, the mortal weapons shattered as if beautiful porcelain jars were smashed by a hammer. However, Faye was strangely calm, and his eyes were getting brighter. The more danger he was in, the calmer he had to be. Perhaps a split-second opportunity would arrive. However, time wasn't on Faye's side. The orange fire sword was about to touch Faye's forehead. The shadow of death enveloped Faye, and he didn't have more strength to fight back. At this moment, Many faces flashed by before Faye's eyes. They were people such as Angela, Elena, Drogba, Torres, Tanasha, and Paris. In fact, Faye suddenly felt like everything that had happened on Azeroth continent was nothing but a dream. As Faye was prepared to accept his death, the thing in Faye's body that never responded to Faye's calls lightly shivered.